2.83%, the EFF at 9.8%, IFP 4.61%, and the Freedom Front Plus 2.8%, making the top 5 nationally, right? So when you look at the ANC being in the lead, what does that tell you, with the thought in mind that these numbers are definitely going to change as time progresses?
Look, good evening to you and good evening to your viewers. I think if we look at the preliminary figures as is, and then it should be worrying to the ANC that they are below 45%. You know, the DA is sitting at 22%, like you said, and the EFF at 9.5%. So certainly at this time, if I was an ANC member, then I would have been worried about this low turnout.
I'd like to perhaps relay a story, something that happened today on my way to work. I took a taxi this afternoon, and the taxi driver, a 46-year-old man, upon hearing, you know, the numbers in terms of results that are trickling in on a national level, visibly upset, and turns around and says, but ninjani nina asivumelananga ukuthi sizoshintsha, you know, angeke sithathe ANC. Loosely translated, what is it that you're doing? Why is the ANC in the lead now? This is somebody who is a staunch ANC supporter but does not have a home in that party anymore. That somebody would feel as passionately as they do like that tells us what about the leadership of the ANC?
I think collectively, you know, there was so much hope in 1994 that the ANC would deliver. I think there's a collective sigh of disbelief at what has gone wrong. If we look at the track record of local government, the last Aegis report, if we now just take the Aegis report on the financial state of municipalities, then only 27 of those municipalities are considered functional. So the ANC has to a large extent disappointed in how it managed its councillors at local government level. The Aegis report was also talked about a culture of no consequence, you know, and so there's been collective disappointment. It's the almost institutionalized corruption which evidence abounds, and so I can feel for the gentleman that talked about this collective disappointment at what went wrong. And the AG report is very clear. You know, the only way to turn this around is through ethical and accountable leadership at local government level. If people put their purpose together and political parties rise to the occasion, rise above party politics, then this happens. But ethical and accountable leadership, I think the ANC is guilty of not offering that to society.
You speak of an offering of ethical and accountable leadership, and you take a look at a party like the Freedom Front Plus, which is coming in 5th at this hour, at least at 2.8%. Their election promise was very clear, right? So we're going to change the procurement processes. We want clean, accountable governance. We also going to, you know, scrap BEE. We don't pretty much believe in it. And here they are coming in at 5th place. A surprise for you?
I think what I admire about the Freedom Front Plus is if they say a thing, they mean it. They don't vacillate, you know. If they say this is what we're going to do, and I think they offer a very strong leadership to their constituency, and it's no surprise. I think there's a lot of, or the minority, some South Africans who buy into this message of the Freedom Front that black economic empowerment has failed, and to a large extent they may not be wrong, because if we look at the history of black economic empowerment in our country, that it has enriched a few at the expense of the majority. And so this whole culture of tenderpreneurs, you know, there's a lot of people that buy into this message of the Freedom Front. So they speak right and they act right.
We cannot talk about leadership without looking at the possibility of coalitions, which is going to probably, you know, play itself out in the next couple of days. When we hone in on particular metropolitans, trouble is brewing for a number of political parties. In the event that there should be coalitions, do you believe, firstly, perhaps let me just ask this question, that we have legislative frameworks in the country that speaks to how coalition governments should play themselves out?
I think the best way, you know, we've got two systems of governance. One is the mayoral executive system, where the mayor has considerable power in a municipality, and then you have got an executive system, the executive committee system. coalitions like they work in KZN, coalitions work best, in my view, if we have an executive, if no party reaches 50%, then the executive committee system says that as you have been represented in council, that an equal amount of seats is divided into an executive system. So for coalitions to work, you have to have principled agreements. You know, it's like a marriage. You have to come to some sort of a principled value-based understanding about what it is that we hope to achieve over the next 5 years and how we're going to achieve that. So for coalitions to work, there has to be a desire to put the purpose of together, to have consensus around how we're going to implement a policy and trying to reach a compromise over the next 5 years in the interest of the electorate. You know, the electorate, I think, couldn't care less. Remember that they've cast their votes. But for the electorate, it matters. Am I safe? Do I have a house? Can my children reach the highest form of education, for example? Are there opportunities for youth development? So local government has got a very big enabling role to play to ensure that we fight poverty, unemployment, and inequality. And political parties, again, like I said, for coalitions to work, coalition partners will have to put their purpose together and come together on a values base.
You speak of coalitions of desire versus coalitions of necessity. You also touch on the interest of the electorate being put forward. Throughout the past couple of weeks here on the channel, we visited a number of places across the country. One that particularly stood out for me was this past weekend in Makanda, where a young woman was being interviewed, and she said, well, we have to sell our bodies in order to put food on the table. That the electorate or the everyday South African has not been put ahead of leaders' interests in this country tells us what, really?
It tells about the selfish nature of politics, is that some people are leaders but are simply, in my view, looters. You know, if you steal from the poor, if you are corrupt, then I think for me that's the highest form of treason, is that to hold public office is such a noble, honest, to work for the good of society is so noble. Unfortunately, if we look at the track record of local government leaders, a lot of them have used public office as their own personal spaza shop. And so for local government to work, we need to make sure that leaders are accountable, that they are ethical, and that they're held to account. And hence, you know, post the 1 November, we have the ward committee system that is also there in terms of our form of governance. Communities are urged not now to sit back and wait for government to deliver service, but to actively work with the elected official to ensure and to hold that person accountable, to make sure that the promise of 1994 is delivered.
What does holding leaders to account look like in a country like South Africa, where some polling stations didn't open on time because there were service delivery protests? That's how some people feel that that's the only way that they are heard, when they're burning the streets.
I can understand that. I was once in a workshop where the one participant said the only time local government listens if they see the smoke. And I asked, now, what does that mean? He says, if we burn tires, then we get the attention of the elected officials. And so that says a lot. You know, the 2016 report, I think Pravin Gordhan was told, the minister, talked about social distance between communities and the elected officials. And so accountability means that there's regular feedback to communities, that ward committees have an opportunity to participate in terms of policy making and bring the different issues to the attention of the ward committee. But it is also that the communities to understand that the power really lies in communities. And that means they must insist on regular feedback to themselves and openness and transparency in how local government functions.
Is there enough active citizen-led participation or leadership, according to your observation?
I think, you know, I'm a child of the 80s. In the 80s, there was a very strong civil societies. Now, if we look at our communities today, you know, some people, you know, I think the low turnout of voters also speaks to the lack of confidence in local government. So there is a big gap between what local government thinks it is doing and how the community perceives these services in certain parts of our country. And so I think the church, the schools, the business community, the Ratepayers Association, all of them cannot sit back now. You know, South Africans are united. We hate corruption. We want ethical and accountable leaders. And, you know, and there's enough good people in communities to demand this. And so communities, you know, especially through the ward committees, must mobilize themselves. Also, I think, you know, if you are a ward councillor listening tonight, you are now the ward councillor of everybody, even those who did not vote for you. And so we expect a level of maturity of the ward councillor to be the leader in that community and to create an enabling environment where people can participate. That is one of the objectives of local government, is to encourage the participation of people in the affairs of local government. What the Freedom Charter talked about, the people shall govern. So the ideal was always that people do not sit back, but people actively participate in making sure that this democracy works. There's enough people that can identify problems. We need innovative solutions and co-creation of public value for this system of local governance to work.
If wishes were horses, Dr. Cloete, I can tell you there are people on the ground who will tell you I'm too hungry to care. Right? That's the reality in South Africa, where a majority of people are still living in squalor. Dr. Harlan Cloete from the School of Public Leadership, thank you.